cooking. It's cooking.
Magical Tetris Challenge, released in 1999 for Nintendo 64 from Capcom. Yes, Capcom actually produced a Tetris game. Will wonders ever cease? Hey. Coincidentally, it's an arcade port, derp. It's one of the few minute number of Nintendo 64 games to be entirely in 2D, not an ounce of polygon, if you will. And this was Capcom's first game on the console, so there you go. Capcom's first foray on Nintendo 64. It's not Mega Man, it's not Street Fighter, it's not Resident Evil, but fucking goddamn Tetris. Just in case you were confused as to whether this video was made for kids or children, the answer is no, by the way. And it's Disney-themed Tetris to boot, which I guess makes sense. Capcom made Disney games once upon a time. They were great. Disney Afternoon Collection hit Switch finally after who knows how long, by the way. You should check it out. Got 2 extra games in there. We'll get to those one of these days because sure, why not? But in the meantime, we've got Magical Tetris Challenge, which is about as no-frills Tetris as you can get, for the most part at least. Magical Tetris Challenge comprises 3 modes of play. There's a standard endless mode, which is your endless traditional marathon Tetris that you keep playing until you top out eventually. There is Magical Tetris, which is where the main competitive element of Tetris comes into play. See, the majority of the game's story mode are versus battles. You clear a line, you send garbage to the other well, and vice versa. With Magical Tetris, the more lines you clear, the more obstacles and counter blocks you send the other way, which means sending weird giant square pieces or non-Tetris conforming pieces that would be at home in one of those brick game things. But if you prefer your Tetris to be traditional and boring, you can enable the up-down Tetris mode, which sends garbage blocks the other way and vice versa and omits the extra bits. In any event, you have 4 characters to choose from: Mickey, Minnie, Donald, or Goofy. The only real difference between the 4 are the cutscenes that play out in the story mode, so it's really just a matter of preference. But Magical Tetris Challenge does have some hints of what would eventually be the standard guideline for future Tetris games. You can hold down the speed your tetrometers fall down the well, or press up to hard drop it into place. You have ghost previews and a grid to keep track of your positionings. You don't have the hold function or multiple piece previews that would be introduced in later games, but there are aspects of modern Tetris sensibilities sort of leaking their way into the formula here. There's not much to the story, as it were, only that a magical gemstone is involved and each character has their own narrative to follow, which basically boils down to there's a problem, let's solve it by playing Tetris, and we move on. Okay. And how does Magical Tetris Challenge play? It's fine. Yeah, it's just fine. Play it as straight Tetris or up-down Tetris as it's called for story purposes, and it plays out just fine. The only thing magical about Magical Tetris' versus battles is the energy meter you fill up that occasionally cleans up your well to a certain point. The extra blocks introduced into the mix is the furthest thing from magical, if I'm being honest here. Control seems responsive enough, almost feeling like one of those Grandmaster games in terms of the general movement and such. Worth noting that this game borrows that series' temporary landing system gimmick, which is just a fancy term for ghost preview, which would become a norm in modern Tetris, so yeah, I don't know why that needed a special term, but whatever. You could also choose from 3 difficulty settings, which results in tougher opponents, or starting off in higher levels where pieces fall faster, which makes sense since this was originally arcade fare. And look, for what it is, it's alright, it's fine, and if this were the only Tetris game on the system, I'd consider it passable fare. But this came out around the same time as the new Tetris, which plays a little better and has more features, including 4-player versus mode, which this game does not have, and that baffles me considering you have 4 characters to play with, and that would have been a no-brainer to have, especially on N64, but really the only hook you have with Magical Tetris Challenge is the Disney skin applied on top. The Magical Tetris Challenge looks alright visually. You've got different backgrounds for different stages, the various characters have little bits of animation, nothing special in that regard really. The main play area looks fairly clean with the grids and the darkened background for clear reading of the blocks. Cutscenes are basic sprite-based stuff with some artwork here and there. It's a perfectly fine looking game for what little it actually achieves here, and it nails the overall Disney style at the time. Not much to say about the audio component of the game. Sound effects are somewhat mechanical sounding, as if the pieces were operated by machinery, which it sort of is if you're going by the characters at the bottom, so that's a kind of a nice touch. No voiceovers, which I find rather surprising, but not necessarily complaining about their omission. To be fair, I don't know if they had those in the arcade version, but whatever, either way. And finally, you have some rather generic sounding techno-ish MIDI tracks that are rather generic and unremarkable sounding. Though I can't help but find one particular track somewhat familiar, as if I've heard it someplace else before. Here, take a listen. And this is rated kids to adults, which is basically E for everyone. Talk about seducing the innocent, you may as well start them off young. Overall, if you like classic Disney characters and you like Tetris, Magical Tetris Challenge combines both worlds in a neatly put together little package. It's fairly decent Tetris fare with that Disney theme on top of it. Is it the best Tetris on N64? No, that would be the new Tetris. Unquestionably the best Tetris on the system, which isn't really saying much. But Magical Tetris Challenge delivers what I would consider perfectly acceptable Tetris, and that's all it really needed to be, so sure, why not? What's another one to add to the pile, I guess?